athletics, like you said, just breaking down barriers, is based on performance and camaraderie, right? Like, we're in the trenches. Like, I'm still boys with kids that I play Pop Warner football with at the age of 8, 9, and 10. Whether we're in the trenches crying because it's 100 degrees out and we got 15 pounds of gear on, but we're only 85 pounds, I think those kind of moments, they go beyond ethnicity. They go beyond race. And you remember, it becomes colorless. You know what I mean? There's no color lines at that point.
It becomes about here. Yo, what's up? I'm your boy, your host, your friend, Baron Davis, and this is Raiders Talk of the Nation. Today's guest needs no introduction. When we talk about multi-hyphenate, the transition of going from athlete to business to entertainment, we about to cover all that today with my man, the one and only Rich Ting. What's up, Eddie?
What's going on?
Raider Nation,
right,
let's
man.
go, Raider gang.
Thanks for having me, bro. I appreciate it. Congrats to you on the gig. I know you're looking fly in the silver and black.
Come on, man. You got the black on.
I had to put a little on, you know what I mean? I'm an LA born and raised kid, went to high school in the Bay, and now we in Vegas. So what I'm trying to say is I've been following the silver and black my whole life,
That's
you know what I mean?
crazy.
So shout out to Miss Sandra, and her whole team, and Marcus, for getting me to a game last year.
Was that your first time?
That was my
At
first
Allegiant?
game in Allegiant.
Okay.
So it lived up to the hype. I was laughing because they're showing me the 3D model in the lobby, and it's a lot better in person. You know what I mean? So, but no, whether it's the lighting, the venues, the lounges, the suites. If you haven't been there, you need to make that a trip. It's
crazy. And then the cool thing about it is did they show you how they bring the grass in?
Right.
Oh,
right.
That's crazy.
No, I think it's a prime example of where we are, technology-wise, performance-wise, you know what I mean? And again, I just think it makes perfect sense for the Raiders to be in Vegas, you know what I mean? Because the layout, whether it's Super Bowl or whether it's just a regular home game, you getting a lot of energy every weekend.
Yeah. And you being from LA, right? From the LA, South Bay area, then going to the Bay.
Right.
Right. And now the Raiders are in Vegas. I always say this is the best neutral site.
Right.
Actually, LA and the Bay Area can get along.
Well, when you say it like that, I'm kind of following you too. You know what I mean? So I'm kind of like a lightweight stalker in a weird way. I finally get to meet you on this platform. But
no, this is amazing.
It's funny how the world works, you know what I mean? And how all worlds collide. And like you said, what a better place, a neutral site to be in the heart, the entertainment capital of the world, Vegas.
Come on, man. Now take us back. When and how, because you play football.
Right.
As a kid, you pick your team.
Right.
When did you choose the Raiders? And just give us a little bit about just growing up, playing football from LA, going to the Bay, and then we'll get into Yale after that.
I love that because actually it was my father who really introduced me to the game. My father's a sports orthopedic surgeon actually in the Bay Area.
Cool.
And during his Curling and Job days back in LA, he was covering the Raiders. And so my first introduction was through my pops.
Oh, wow.
Literally on the sideline as an infant. And, through that, I had to go through some other teams, Rams, Niners, all these other dudes out there, right? But no, that was the intro, and I think just through the culture, I think Raider Nation is so strong, no matter if you're in LA, Oakland, or now Vegas, I think it speaks for itself. So obviously, I like to say this, I have allegiances to certain teams like the Raiders, but I'm a fan of the game. You know what I mean? So whether it's former teammates of mine that I played in the league or former teammates of mine that are now coaching in the league, right? I kind of have my individuals. So, depending on what week it is, I'm silver and black underneath, but I may be throwing on another color for that week.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So,
for your teammate, former team. And I was going to ask you, growing up in the Bay, playing football. Football is a bigger thing than basketball.
No offense, you know what I'm saying?
It's okay.
I started playing Pop Warner football at the age of 8.
Okay.
And being in the Bay Area at that time, I'm affiliated and a proud alumni of the Redwood City 49ers.
Okay.
Okay. So they didn't have they had the Morgan Hill Raiders that was a little far for my mom to drive. So we kept it local in Redwood City. But even that, being, I think, one of the only Asian American kids back in the day, we're talking in the 80s, in a full contact sport at the age of 8, all the way up to playing at Yale in college. I've kind of been that token Asian American quarterback slash safety or utility, whatever you want to call it, and just being able to, I always call it, be the experimental child in our family. I have 2 younger brothers who ironically went to USC full ride and played with Coach Pete. You know what I mean? So PC
We love Coach
is a
Pete.
family friend, We've known him for a while, and shout out to all, the Trojan fans out there. But, I think it's been interesting because whether it was, baseball, basketball, martial arts, just being active as a kid, I think during those eras, as an Asian American was an experience and it set a foundation for, literally adversity, for challenges, kind of being the only one that looked like me on a team. It really helped, I guess, strengthen me at the core, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, to enter this entertainment game, which is a whole nother beast. You know what I mean? So I always, I approach everything as an athlete. That's all I knew the first 20 something years of my life. And I realized,
Yep.
whether it's business now or, just being on screen, on camera in Hollywood, I really pull back on all those core memories and those foundations all my coaches kind of set. So shout out to my parents for getting me in those situations.
Definitely.
Because it wasn't until now that I really realized the value, of why we were going from Pop Warner to AAU to martial arts, to Little League.
It makes so much sense when you can look back on it. And shout out to your parents for just, like I would say, it's so great when you're conditioned
100%.
in sports, and sports becomes your, your recipe for life goals, right? Or it helps you better identify your lives.
No, I think, you can identify with this, but the team element, right? I think a lot of people who don't have the opportunity as a kid or in life to be part of a team are really missing out on a lot of core values. A lot of these professions, a lot of, other sports that are more individualistic, unfortunately, I think that works against you, because you're going to have a bad day. I'm going to have a bad day. But you're going to pick me up, I'm going to pick you up, right?
Bingo.
And so I've been able to carry those fundamentals into the workforce as an entertainer. So when we all come together on a set and I just met you, but I got to act like, I've known you for 15 years, right? We just picking up on camera to where we just left off. We got to formulate that bond right away.
Absolutely.
And I pull that from all those experiences on the turf, on the wood, wherever it would be, on the baseball diamond. So, man, I'm an athlete. You know what I mean?
Quarterback and a safety. So, think 1999.
Right.
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 Yeah.
Right. I
Championship.
was a quarterback. Let me put it to you now. Now I'm just a civilian.
But still being in that position, right? That's the captain's chair. That's the executive cabinet.
Right.
Right. You also played with our defensive coordinator.
Right.
Yeah. So Coach Graham.
Coach Pat Graham.
There you go. Tell me, Pat. Tell me some Pat stories.
First of all, I'm so happy for Pat, man. Like, and I'm so happy for the Raiders for having him. And I think he's been an asset to the program. His work and his coaching speaks for itself.
I will say and do whatever I have to do to get the best out of you.
I was mentioning some of the staff earlier. Like, I remember hanging out with him at the FM house, at Yale. Obviously we spent a lot of time on the team, meetings, film, we were both on the offensive side of the ball. He was a tight end, huge target, you know what I mean? But more importantly, a great individual, very passionate, cool temperament. I think Pat's physical demeanor is more intimidating than who he really is. He's one of the sweetest guys, and so for the Raiders actually to bring me back to a home game last year to kind of reunite with Pat, like, that was dope. You know what I mean? So super happy for him and his family. And, I root for a lot of my ex-teammates who have not only played in the league, but have gone on to coach in the league currently. So, shout out to Pat Graham.
Shout out to Pat Graham. He's so intense. To your point, it was like, when you look at him, it's intimidating.
Right.
But I call him like Dr. Cool. Like, he's so cool.
He is.
And he deliver it, so charismatically. You like, should I be afraid of it? Like, if this dude got mad, like, was there any instances in college where you like, man, this dude is pretty intense?
Well, here's the thing. I think being a student athlete at Yale or any of the Ivy Leagues speaks volumes for who you are as a person. You know what I mean? So I think all of those teammates I had are intimidating, because not only can they ball, but they can also ball in the classroom and maybe ball in the finance room or ball in the consulting room or
Right.
wherever that may be. And so, that was one of the commonalities I think with playing in the Ivy League was that, being a leader in high school, also excelling in academics. Now I'm on a team, let alone a league full of valedictorians that also can be physical in their respective sports, right? And so when you ask about intimidation, you know, you can talk as much trash as you want. Like I grew up like that, and like I said, being the only Asian American kid, I heard it all. I still hear it. I don't really get shook, you know what I mean? But I'll tell you right now, Pat Graham, knowing he has a Yale degree, that'll shake me a little bit. You know what I mean? That'll do something to me. You know what I mean? Because he can talk all that smack he wants, but at the end of the day, I also know he's skilled in a whole nother area. And so again, to bring all that intelligence, both academic and athletic, to the Raiders program, and if you're one of his players, I would be a sponge. You know what I mean? I would be soaking that up 24/7 because that man is full of knowledge, as all my other former teammates are. You know what I mean? Because we just were exposed to another world, being in the Ivy League. And fortunately for me, I finally got to appreciate that, because when you're 18, 19,
You
20,
don't appreciate it.
you know what I mean? I'm a West Coast kid. Now I'm in New Haven, Connecticut. I came from a team of, all African Americans in the Bay to a team where Pat was one of like 2, 3.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? So I had that, I think that ethnic, cultural bond with him right away. You know what I mean? Because that's what I was familiar with.
But that's what sports does.
Right.
Right. Especially, a sport like football it breaks down any kind of stereotypes because you get a chance to get intimate.
Right.
And the goal is scoring a touchdown. Winning the game. So cultures, right? The alignment of culture, I would say the best thing about being an athlete, especially in college, are the bus rides. Because you get to know where people are from.
Right.
You get to figure out where there's synergy, who you relate to, but people get to share their journey.
100%. That brings up a lot of good points. When the bus ride, for example, at Yale, we actually took a bus from campus to the athletic fields. So we're literally on a bus, you know what I mean? And I remember conversations because some of my closest friends today were because of those seats on that bus, you know what I mean? And as far as like, athletics, like you said, just breaking down barriers is based on performance and camaraderie, right? Like we're in the trenches. Like, I'm still boys with kids that I play Pop Warner football with at the age of 8, 9, and 10. Whether we're in the trenches crying because it's 100 degrees out and I'm wearing the same helmet I wore at 8 and I did at 21, you know what I mean? And we got 15 pounds of gear on, but we're only 85 pounds. You know what I mean? I think those kind of moments, they go beyond ethnicity. They go beyond race. And you remember it becomes colorless. You know what I mean? There's no color lines at that point.
It becomes about here.
100%.
And when you look at people, you look at them with a, man, I really like this person.
Yeah.
Right? Like, man, I really want to, like, you want to pour in because you know what's in their heart.
That also works with, when you meet new people.
Yeah.
And you know that they come from a team background. They come from whether it's basketball or football or whatever sport, that they physically had to get it. You know what I mean? They know that, they put the time in the film room, in the meetings, working on nutrition, working on wellness, getting up, doing morning workouts before class. All these things that I don't think people really focus on or speak about. There's a reason why there's instant bond. Yeah. You know what I mean? When I meet someone, I don't even know who you are. You know what I mean? There's an energy.
You can tell when somebody's locked in. And how locked in they are, whether it's sports and then transition into acting, right? You were saying you have to make those adjustments.
Right.
Talk about how sports has always prepared you for acting. The second part is talk about how acting made you recognize that sport was an art form.
It goes back to literally being 4 years old, starting martial arts, being 8 years old, starting Pop Warner, playing AAU, whatever it was, and being coachable.
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of people that I think are in the entertainment world don't come from the similar background that I do, which is meaning that I've had coaches of all ages congratulate me, insult me, critique me, abuse me, literally by, by physical exertion, you know what I mean? Whether it's taking another lap, it's 95 degrees. I'm 9 years old. We already ran a mile, right? Take another lap, you know what I mean? And I'm crying like I want to quit, you know what I mean? So I think all those leading up to me being now on a set with directors, with producers, with writers, with showrunners, with studio executives, give me the note. Give me the adjustment. I will change. I will adapt. You guys are the professionals behind the camera. I'm on camera. I'm here for us. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people who don't have that team background or that coach background, so to speak, it's hard for some people to take direction. It's hard for people to be told that, I've been called every name in the book by coaches, you know what I mean?
Right, yep.
So like I said earlier, you can't really shake me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I'm there to do a job for a studio, for a network. And if you need me to go left, not right, you need to go bigger, not smaller, then let's do it. So one thing I always put out there in every production that I start to the creatives is, hey, talk to me. I'm not that guy that's going to tell you, leave me. I want more. I'm going to watch film. I still watch film, and this goes back to all these times with my dad. We finished the game. We're on the couch, an hour later, and he's, forward, backwards, stop, play, you know what I mean? So I'm used to being evaluated and I'm used to being critiqued. So I think that's one of the key fundamentals that has enabled me to succeed and obviously have rapport with producers, writers, directors, and on the flip side of that, by being in front of the camera and being, kind of in another arena, sometimes it's a contact arena if we're doing action stuff, but I think, again,
which is really hard.
I mean, so it's hard because it's controlled chaos. But the thing that's great about it is, shout out to the stunt community. We have these stunt men and women that come from all backgrounds, and I call it, like I said, controlled chaos, because they're wrecking, making me look like a hero. You know what I mean? But we're doing it like 10, 15, 20 times. And they're getting up and they're resetting and we're doing it again. A lot of people,
It's a discipline, man. It's a discipline to filmmaking, because similar to football, right? Dissimilar from basketball. I had to learn this when I started taking acting roles, because as a basketball player, I'm like this all the time. Like, okay, 30 minutes, I got to do something.
Right.
And I realized that there's a certain type of like routine, methodical discipline. I didn't know that you had to get 20 takes at this angle and then another 7 here.
Right.
So you can imagine.
And then we're going to do the other angle after lunch. You know what I mean?
We're going to take your pickups.
Right.
So when I first got into it, I was just, it was more so like not understanding that these practice plays are really game time plays 100%. From the director's eye.
There's a certain cadence to it all, you know what I mean? And one thing that I had to learn coming from a similar background and just in life, like what we practice today, we're prepping for Saturday, right? Or whenever game day is. When you prep in Hollywood, you may be prepping for something 10, 15 years ahead that you may not know when it's going to happen, right? So I think what I always call it is you got to have really good energy control. The highs can never get too high. The lows can never get too low. When I get on set, it's almost like a Zen moment for me. You kind of you have to control, because if you don't know, and I see it all the time with newbies, right? With people that are a little bit more green and have, and I try to coach them up if I can, if they're willing to hear me, to be like, hey, we're going to be doing this for about 4 hours. So if you're going to go 150 on the first take, you may want to pull back a little bit, and not pull back on the quality, but pull back in between the moments. You know what I mean?
It's exhausting.
Yeah. Because you really have, it's energy control, it's different than football or basketball or sports where, you can get a timeout, you can get a break. We got quarters and whatnot, and everything's high speed, stop and go. This is like endurance, right? So, and a lot of the energy is wasted on waiting, because like you said, when you're waiting, you ready, right? And you're burning. So it's almost like I said, it's almost like a very Zen thing where when you're off camera and you're in between takes and they're shooting the other actor, you almost have to go into a meditative state to purposely save yourself.
Yeah, to store up.
And all that's mind-body control, which then goes back to athletics.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because it is different. The cadence is different. The frequency, the tempo is different, but the fundamentals are the same. You know what I mean? So again, props to my parents put me in all these sports, because I don't think, I would have been as successful as I've been having not had these experiences like in the athletic realm.
Yeah. Okay. You get to play GM. You got one pick for this year's team. You can pick any character of any movie,
Okay.
any TV show you've been on,
Okay.
and you can sign them to the Raiders right now.
Any one of my characters.
Any one of your characters?
If I'm bringing this player to the Raiders, for example, I'm gonna want a savage warrior beast.
That's right.
So I'm gonna take the physicality from my character Bolo and Warrior.
Warrior,
right?
Yep.
At the same time, I want to be an enforcer and I want to be on the good side. So I'm gonna take my character Sergeant Tyson Koyama from On Call.
Okay.
Because he's a team leader.
Okay.
Right, and he's serving the community, which the Raiders organization
Yes.
obviously does.
Big
Right.
time.
And then I think the third recent character I'll take will be Jackie Ming from Tulsa King. Because that dude, he don't mess around. You know what I mean? He's strictly business. You know what I mean? I think he's a perfect example of a true Gemini, where if it's business, it's business. And when he's not doing business, he's not doing business,
Right.
But when things need to get real, it gets real fast. You know what I mean? So I've had the opportunity to play so many different characters, villains, heroes, whatever. You know what I mean? I could throw in Metallo from Supergirl because I got that kryptonite power. You know what I mean? I'll just destroy everyone. But no, if I could bring everyone together, that would
It's
probably
a deadly
be the all-star.
combination.
Yeah.
Talk about your love for, Raiders football.
I don't go around with a Raiders shirt on or a jersey on, you know what I mean? But when I show up to my first day of work on Call on Amazon Prime and I meet my creator, Tim Walsh, and he's wearing a Raiders hat, I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? Okay. I thought you was cool on the phone, you know what I mean? But now it's real. You know what I mean? And so we and this is a true story. Tim Walsh is a diehard.
Oh, we got to get him on.
Oh no, so he accompanied me to the game last year. His picture's been up there behind me a little bit. So and that's just another cool element, that this program here and this culture has been able to bring all the way to Hollywood to a set, like I signed on for the character. I didn't sign on because I knew of these other affiliations.
Totally.
But that gives Tim and I this other bond outside of the work, outside of the creative, where we can hang out on Sundays or we can come out to Vegas, and really and see it in the real life. You know what I mean? So we got to get him back. We got to get him back here.
We got to get him back.
Shout out to my guy.
Talk about, from an intellectual standpoint, Coach Pete Carroll.
Pete has known me as the older brother because that was my former identity, because my brothers were balling out, at SC with Reggie and Matt and Lindell and all those guys. And, knowing how amazing he's been to our family since recruiting my brothers in high school, seeing those glory years at SC. I think the one thing that's been super consistent is his enthusiasm, which is evident. I mean, every time there's a B-roll or video clip, he's got the gloves on, he's shooting hoops, he's going out he's dropping back, and I think is something that we all should strive to achieve. It's like when I work with these OG actors, Stallone, Jeff Bridges, these guys have been generational heroes, you know what I mean? Legends. And so is Coach Carroll. So, no, man, it's exciting to see what I've been through and to see it line up to what's currently going on here with Gino, with Coach Pete, with my former teammate Pat Graham, even Coach Olsen. I'm excited. We got a personal connection to the family of Coach Olsen, so excited to see him working with the quarterbacks. But no, man, this has been a serendipitous, but as I say, there's no coincidences in life. Everything happens for a reason. And so just to be sharing the spotlight with you, on this episode, man, this is fire. You know what I mean?
Wait, give me 3 all-time favorite Raiders. It's no order, just like 3, like right off the bat.
I think just being from the Bay and being a quarterback, obviously I got to put Jim Plunkett, on the map, right? Because that's old school,
legend,
right?
Come on.
Yeah. I got to give a shout out to Roger Craig. Coming up, in the glory days of the Niners, and then having him and obviously Jerry come over to the Raiders, that was cool. So I got to give a shout out to Raj. And the last one, shoot, I mean, all right, I'm gonna get some heat from Trojan Nation on this one, but I mean, this goes to the Bay, and there ain't no individual rep the Bay harder than Marshawn. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And he beast mode. You know what I
Beast
mean?
mode.
Like I said, it's not so much about the teams with me. It's about my personal connections. Jim Plunkett being inspiration. Obviously, Roger Craig being not only like an uncle to me and back in the 80s and 90s. And then seeing a guy like Marshawn just do his thing, and just just rep for the Bay. You know what I mean? So I think those are my three. I know there's so many more.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Mr. Stick to the Journey, chop wood. Every opportunity is advantageous to you.
Appreciate
That's kind
that.
of like what I learned from this conversation. And being first has responsibilities to it.
Right. 100%.
And then understanding and recognizing when you do accomplish something to look back, right, from acting to sports to acting, and find out how do you continue to chop wood and get better, right? Shout out to my man, Rich Ting.
Appreciate you, Val. All right.
Look forward to seeing you, man, supporting all you're doing.
Appreciate you.
Look forward to having you, and we'll have more for you. Yeah.